Japanese people wanted to be introduced or to be exposed to other parts of the world. So these are famous monuments around the world, and people would buy those kind of little picture cards. So they will remember also, if you go to Paris, you go to Vendôme Plaza, then you are going to have this large statue, or Spain has Gibraltar coastline, or Italy, there is a big what is it? This is a Vatican City. This is actually designed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. If you ever studied Renaissance art, so they want you to get exposed. And then most important aspects is Japan now had railroad. I mean, why do you need railway timetable? Because in 1870s there was already a railroad. So you see the locomotive, right? The coal operated locomotives are running. So Japanese people needed the timetables in order to ride train, like say, every hour, right? So the ukiyo-e was a functional tool to disseminate this kind of graphic information. So do you recognize what this is? Brooklyn Bridge. Yes, it was built in the late 19th century. So Brooklyn Bridge was a scenery. And modern lifestyle was introduced in modern facilities of telephone, telegrams already, photography. People would go to photographer's studio in order to dress up. So not everybody owns the European suit. So if you are an ordinary citizen, you would go to photo studio, dress up, and have a picture taken. And then 1920s, you're going to see this phenomenon called MOGA, and they are abbreviation of modern boy, modern girl. So it's Japanese pronunciation, modern boy, modern girl. So now girls are going to school, universities, and they can work in the factory, as you can see here, or they can play tennis. Where is my people can play tennis, or there are two words, one woman in traditional clothes, another woman in well-dressed, stylish European dress, and then women go to the beach, so you have a little bit of nudity, and then women are also learning how to make their hairstyle to go well with fashion. So they already have a subway. So now Japan, they needed graphic designers. When there is a timetable was introduced, subway lines are set up, and you need a number of infographics, right? Like a graphic design to give information to people. And then European style buildings were made. And let me move on. So this is Asai Chu, the artist that I mentioned. Right? He was a student of Antonio Fontanesi. And then if they go to world expositions, they wanted to show this oil painting, very exotic topic of Kannon, the Avalokiteshvara, but the material is oil painting on canvas. So European audiences will be amazed by the realistic depiction of oil painting by a Japanese artist. And then the topic is non-Western. It is exotic. It is Avalokiteshvara. So now let's talk about Kuroda Seiki. So Kuroda Seiki is very important as a person who left a big impact on oil painting in entire East Asia. His painting, this one is called By the Lake, painted 1897, became a model of respectful oil painting throughout East Asia. So in the early 20th century, there will be a public art competitions organized by the government that will be held in Japan or in China or the Korean peninsula, which was colonized by Japan, those areas. And if you want to win the first, second, or third award, you have to choose respectful subject matters. Beauty, right? Like a beautiful young woman, but they are not in shocking form. They are usually in a very serene and quiet mode, more like a spirit of reading, reading woman kind of thing, in a type of subject matter. So this one is called By the Lake. It shows a young woman of the summertime of a very light bathrobe, but it's summertime, so she also needs her fan. She doesn't have overt makeup or sensational dresses, but you can see her youthful face and proportional gestures, so a type of beautiful woman. And then it was depicted outdoor. So you can see a little bit of orange hues on the lake. So this kind of painting was considered a noble, respectful, excellent oil painting. What's his name? Kuroda Seiki is very important. So I am going to stop sharing my Japanese art and then moving on to Korean art. But some of the essay questions in your slide test, you will be asked to talk about ukiyo-e prints, and that is actually based on your previous chapter, previous unit 6. So I hope you can answer well about development of Japanese ukiyo-e and why it became very popular in Europe, and how European oil painting became important subject or important category in East Asia. Now I'm going to Korea, modern Korea. Because this is East Asian art, I cannot, oh, why am I showing you China? Stop sharing, going back to my slide. I'm going to show you modern Korea. Okay. Okay, so you are looking at the modern Korea. Okay. So modern Korea art, which is the first one? So modern Korea has somewhat similar development with modern Japan. Korea doesn't exist from the year 1910. 1910, the Korea became annexed by Japan, so they're 1910. So there is no country named Korea. So Korea was known to European audiences in the late 19th century. So this is a French advertisement of a food product, and they say it was made in Korea. It's like a Korean quality of Korea. It shows Incheon, and it says meat container, like a can of meat. So it was known. And then when Japan took over the government of the Korean Empire, Japanese colonizers suppressed Koreans' indigenous tradition, like a shamanism, or shamanism, and then traditional form of entertainment, and then eventually language. So a lot of Korean people ended up speaking Japanese at school. It's like English is official language for the United States, right? But you can speak any other languages at home. So Korean people would speak Korean in the family or household, or when they come to school, they are learning subject matters in Japanese. So in a way, it was a bilingual society. And if you look at one of the multiple choice questions, there are several examples of the conditions of early 20th century Korean art. And in it, you are going to see isolationism, like isolationism is more for the late 19th century, like the era of Shin Yun-bok or Kim Hong-do. Back then, Korean people didn't want to, especially in the 19th century, early 19th century, Korean people didn't want to communicate or trade with foreign countries. So that is a self-imposed isolation, but that changed after introduction of Japanese colonialism. So like any other country, Korea already had made efforts to modernize itself. It didn't go very well, so that's why Korea in Peninsula became part of Japanese Empire, and after it became Japanese Empire, Korean citizens moved to other countries. They wanted to modernize themselves. So again, this is similar to Mobo Moga of Japan. So this is modernism and modernity in Korea, showing modernized girls, modernized men, and some girls are studying with American missionaries. They now wear shoes. So there are a lot of magazine illustrations commenting on modern girls. And modern girls also use hand wristwatches, well dressed. But you can see that there are two trends. So some women are very stylish in European fashion, but some women have that hybrid school uniform based on Korean traditional dress of hanbok. This one and this one is the same. So the people modernized the hanbok so that it stops at your calf, and then you either have sneakers or shoes.